For centuries, the pharaohs of the Old Kingdom ruled from Memphis with absolute authority, commanding the construction of massive stone pyramids. Then, around 2181 BCE, the building abruptly stopped. The royal court had spent generations pouring immense wealth into these monumental tombs. By the time the Sixth Dynasty rolled around, those projects had drained the royal treasury and stretched the central administration thin. At the exact time the Egyptian state was running out of money, the entire region was hit by the 4.2 kiloyear event, a severe and sudden shift in global climate that brought drought to civilizations across the ancient world. For Egypt, this meant the Nile River, the singular source of life for the region, experienced low and highly irregular flooding. Without that annual floodwater, the agricultural system failed entirely. The pharaoh was supposed to be a living god who controlled the seasons and the river. When a bankrupt king from Memphis couldn't produce the floods, the illusion of his divine control collapsed. The local impacts were devastating. Fields turned to dust, crop yields plummeted, and grain prices skyrocketed. Malnutrition and starvation spread quickly through the provinces. Texts from the era, like the Admonitions of Ipuwer, record dry rivers, starving citizens, and the psychological terror of watching the central bureaucracy disintegrate. Because of those apocalyptic descriptions, early historians took the texts quite literally. They labeled this centuries-long gap between unified empires a chaotic dark age. The Memphis government certainly died, but the millions of people living along the Nile survived. They did it by restructuring exactly how their society operated. With the central authority gone, Egypt physically broke apart into two rival power centers. In the north, the 9th and 10th dynasties ruled from Herakleopolis. They controlled the Nile Delta and desperately tried to maintain the rigid hierarchy of the Old Kingdom. Meanwhile, a scrappy coalition of local rulers took control of the south, establishing a new power base in the city of Thebes. This map shows the geographic reality of that division, Herakleopolis up in the north and Thebes down in the south. These two factions were locked in constant civil war. Power and territory continuously shifted back and forth between rival dynasties. Because the kingdom was divided and bleeding resources into this conflict, there was no unified body to manage large-scale irrigation or grain storage. Individual provinces realized they were completely on their own. This vacuum empowered the Nomarchs. These were local provincial governors who used to serve the pharaoh, but now found themselves isolated. Instead of sending resources up the river to a king, the Nomarchs took over the state apparatus. They kept local taxes, built independent administrations, and raised private armies. We can physically see their ambition. Instead of burying themselves near a pharaoh's pyramid, they began carving elaborate royal-style tombs right into their local hillsides. With international luxury trade dead, the economy became heavily localized. Communities relied on regional farming and local barter networks to stay alive. The collapse of the Memphis government provided the exact catalyst local leaders needed. Without a king siphoning their wealth, provincial governors achieved regional independence. This is why modern historians view the first intermediate period differently. The collapse of the monarchy triggered a massive redistribution of wealth. Instead of all resources flowing into the royal court, middle-level elites, local merchants, and artisans retained the fruits of their labor and began to prosper. This economic shift caused a major cultural change. In the Old Kingdom, the afterlife was treated as an exclusive club. Only the pharaoh possessed the divine magic required to achieve eternity. Now, that magic belonged to anyone who could afford it, seen here in the coffin texts. These localized spells were adapted from sacred pyramid texts. Regular people painted them inside personal coffins to navigate the underworld themselves. The collapse of the central government meant ordinary people gained economic and religious agency. For the first time in Egyptian history, a local official could build his own tomb and secure his own piece of eternity. This era of fractured, independent provinces finally reached its breaking point around 2055 BCE. Mentuhotep II, a powerful ruler from the southern coalition in Thebes, pushed north and permanently crushed the northern dynasties. By defeating his rivals, he stitched the divided regions back into a single state, officially launching what we now call the Middle Kingdom. Mentuhotep II restored the throne, but the people he ruled had spent generations building their own wealth and securing their own paths to the afterlife. The new pharaoh would have to govern a populace that had learned how to govern itself.